Hello. Hi, everybody. This is Mike and Rainbow here. We just had a little malfunction here. We didn't normally have a voice come on and tell us we're recording. So we were a little bit in shock.
Are we sure we're recording?
Yeah, we are right there in the corner.
Okay.
Let's hope so. Anyways, today we're going to talk about MIBs, Men in Black.
And women.
Yeah. WIBs, Women in Black. And then Rainbow will talk about BECs, but I'm not going to tell you what that is. Let Rainbow tell you a little later. So anyways, as a researcher for 50 plus years, one of the areas of paranormal that I've dealt with, and I know Rainbow has too, was this whole Men in Black thing. And I've had some of my own experiences. I've worked with people who've had experiences. I know Rainbow's had some experiences. So we're going to talk a little bit about all those types of experiences and some of our interpretations of those experiences. Kind of a typical encounter is somebody comes, maybe a person has a UFO experience and they've been kind of talking to some people about it. And what happens is suddenly 2 people or 3 people are up here that are kind of these pale skinned people, all dressed typically in black, have kind of dark eyes, may have some type of glasses, may have a strange, 1930s outfit on, maybe driving in the background. You may be able to see a big Cadillac or a very dark old car, the large car typically. And these happen, and some of them have happened. These whole scenarios will happen in modern day, meaning in the 2020, it does happen. And those people would come to the door and they talk very strangely, ask you strange questions, and basically threaten you and tell you you have to stop talking about UFOs or alien encounters or whatever it is. And that's kind of the typical way it kind of flows. And then sometimes they abruptly leave and you never see them again. But they do instill some fear in you, and they basically want you to shut up, basically. And some people shut up and some people don't. I have never shut up, but I just never have shut up, period. So anyways, that's
I'm not saying anything.
Thank you. Please don't. So anyways, MIBs, of course, WIBs, Women in Black. And I have had, my own experience in that, but let me say a couple more things. It seems like throughout history, and we can go way back, and there's talk about these kind of beings that come and kind of threaten people. Sometimes there's some movies that have come out, like Charlie Chaplin movies, where they actually have a person that looks like a woman in black. And she may be drawn in a black carriage, and it comes and it may threaten people to not do something. Maybe wearing a long coat, maybe her face may be covered. In fact, in one of the famous scenes in a Charlie Chaplin movie, it actually showed, and this goes way back. Remember, these movies are in the 20s and 30s, and this person looked like it had a cell phone actually. Which was really odd. And this came out in an article by a guy that Nick Redfern, and he's done some books and some discussion on men and women in black. And in fact, he's also got a new book, and I don't remember the name of it, but
he's got many books, and we've talked to Nick, and he's a nice guy.
He is a nice guy. One of the other things that he brought up in a book was that in the famous, a different subject, but the Mothman in West Virginia, where actually there's a woman in black that was going around the neighborhood, and basically wherever people had sighted the Mothman, she would show up mysterious out of the blue, and she would tell them that they didn't see what they saw. And that went on for years, and they never really could track her down. But it was another thing that he brought up that dealt with the woman in black. So let me tell you one of my stories. Back in January, it was early January, right after New Year's, came back to work. It was 1995 in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was sitting there in my office, and my office manager walked in and said, there's a woman out there that wants to talk to you about, I was a distribution manager for a large company. And she said, this woman wants to talk to you about, I think you should talk to her, wants to talk to you about freight. She was a freight salesman and would sell services for freight. And normally it was first unusual for my office assistant to come in and ask me to do that, because she knew I didn't like uninvited or people that I didn't have a schedule or a appointment with to come on unannounced, basically. But she was my office manager was very insistent. So I was almost curious to see who this woman was. And so I could kind of see through the door, and there she was sitting, and she was quite attractive, but she was kind of odd looking because she was very pale white. It looked like she put, what is that? What's the white?
Powder cake.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Powder.
Yeah, really
foundation.
thick. Yeah, really thick foundation. She had large, dark eyes. I don't want to say they were like, black eyes, but they were very dark. And she was quite attractive. If it wouldn't be for some of these odd things, she was dressed in this kind of black plain dress. So, okay, I said, fine, let her come in. So she comes in, and it started off maybe the first few minutes, very normal for a freight salesman, talk about, what their services were, what they did. She did give me a business card, which was interesting.
Do you still have it?
No. I mean, I could have it in a box somewhere, but anyways, she gave me the business card. So I put the business card down on the desk. And so we started talking, but suddenly, completely everything changed. She suddenly, almost her voice and the way her attitude and her everything changed. She says, I have to tell you something. And I kind of looked at her and I said, okay. And I'm thinking, what is this all about? And she said, my brother was in Tennessee. He was in a hotel, and he was also a salesman. I don't know what type of salesman he was, but anyways, he was there doing his thing, but he was in his hotel room in the evening, and he said she said two aliens came through the wall. I said, okay. And she doesn't know. And I guess she was probably taken back a little bit because I wasn't like shocked, because I've been a researcher all my life. So this was like, okay, type thing. So anyway, she said he was sitting on the bed, and they came through the wall, and they told him that in about 2 weeks there would be this huge earthquake in Japan, and I'm pretty sure she said Kobe, Japan, and 5,000 people would die, and this is going to be a very, very bad situation, or something to that effect, they said. And they just turned around and walked right back through the wall. And so she told me this, and I kind of looked at her, and then that was it. She got up, she turned around, and she walked completely out. And I'm just like standing there, just looking at it. And I called my office manager in, and she was a very interesting person, because she had some really amazing experiences herself, UFO type experience. And and just a little side note, I've always, wherever I worked, I always seemed to either hire people that were into those type of things, and I found out after I hired them, which was always very interesting. So I was able to get a lot of stories. But anyways, I said, her name was September, odd name, right? And I said, September, this is what this woman said. And she just looked at me and said, oh, okay. I said, September, you want me to repeat this whole thing again? This is what this woman said. September said, okay. I said, well, September, go back to your desk. So anyways, so this was on like the 2nd or 3rd of January, right? So anyways, on I think it was the 17th of January, guess what?
Oh, God.
The earthquake happened in Kobe, Japan. And in fact, there was another thing I realized I left out. I believe it was an 8.9 or 9.1 earthquake is what she actually said that. And that's exactly what it was. Wow. I think it was initially, it was a 9.2 or 3. It was very large. And then they brought it down, like they, recalculated or something. It was closer to an 8.99, which is still very powerful, right? And so 5,000 people died. It was a big deal. I think there was a tsunami, but I don't remember all the details on that. But anyways, to say the least, I was totally shocked because I really,
Yeah.
honestly, I was really confused and perplexed by the encounter of the woman, right? But when the prediction came true, I was just completely blown away. Okay, completely. So I'm scrambling to find this business card, right? So I found it and I said, oh, shoot, I'm going to be able to call her. I don't remember her name, but I saw the card. I got the name. I called the number. And yeah, it was the company. It was. But guess what? There wasn't such a person. This was a small trucking company in Atlanta. And I'd heard of them before. And they said, no, there's no woman here. In fact, she even said, I mean, the person I talked to, she said that there's only 3 salesmen, and all 3 of the salesmen were men. They didn't even have a woman there, but they had a card. So I said, listen, I got to talk to and I knew the owner of I didn't know the owner, but I know of the owner. And I said, is the owner there? And she said, yeah, sure. You want to talk to him? And so I talked to this guy, and he said, no, we don't. I never heard of this person. And I said, listen, I got a business card here from your company with her name on it. And he says, well, I'm sorry, there is no such a person. And I believed him. In fact, he did say, please send it to me, etc. And I don't think I ever did. I think I do have it somewhere, so I'm pretty sure. But anyways, that's not that important. But the strange thing about it is, I think that was a woman in black experience. And I'm not really too sure what was the meaning for her telling me this. It was an amazing story. It was a story that I've been telling for many, many years, but it was incredible. So that was a kind of a little different woman in black type thing. She wasn't threatening. She was just coming to give me some information. Why, I don't know. I was expecting, something else to happen, but nothing ever did as far as related to that, other than telling me that aliens talked to her brother and et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, kind of that's it. Rainbow, what do you got with men in black or women in black?
Well, I've just had experiences with the men, and from the time frame of childhood, since I was really little. And probably the one memory that sticks out for me was when I was around 5 or 6, and I was somewhere like in a cave or whatever, and there was a fire. And I remember, I've never forgotten it. I guess it was so odd at the time, but there were 2 men in black suits, and they actually had black glasses on. And I remembered it was so odd to be in a cave with sunglasses on, because if anybody's ever walked into a cave, you know how dark they are.
Yeah.
But there was a fire, and they told me to jump over the fire, and it was probably about 3 feet across, this fire, and I'm like, I'm not jumping over this fire. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And one of the men in black turned to me and said, good job. I said, that's very good. And I remember that for my whole childhood, that memory stuck in my mind. And I'm thinking, that is the weirdest memory to have. And from a lot of blocked memory that kind of came to me when I hit 40, I have vague memories of them, but not being afraid. They were really odd, kind of almost like stick figures, because they're so stiff.
Yeah.
There's like no personality there at all.
No.
But as a child, I don't remember being afraid. I remember being cautious, and you never wanted to cross them, and you didn't ever want them mad at you at all. So I remember that. And so let's go a little further, probably to when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. My parents put me into a public school called Inez in Albuquerque. And thank God, the whole time I was in this elementary school, I didn't have any crazy stuff happen. So I was appreciative of that. Only thing that I had happen to me was when I would walk home from school. And when I walk home from school, I'd be freaked out and scared. And that was the time when I was always jumping in bushes. So when I would jump in bushes, it was always because I was afraid somebody was going to come find me and pull me into a car. So the one experience that I do have that has, I remember it as clear as day, is I was walking home from school, and those big, the big black limousines, but this was a caricature type car, drove up behind me and went past a little bit, and they opened this big, huge door that blocked me crossing the sidewalk. And a strange voice from inside said, "Get in." And I remember seeing the arm, and the arm was not a Men in Black, like a sleeve. It was a gray alien. But the car itself looked like the Men in Black type of car.
Now, when you said it was a caricature, what do you mean by that?
Like
exactly?
a cartoon caricature type
okay.
car.
A cartoon. Okay.
And yeah, that I needed to clarify that. Thank you. So it was like a very strange 1930s car. Now maybe it's just was odd to me because I'd never seen it before, but it was it looked kind of like kind of like some expensive car that was black and gray, that had chrome on it, and it was just it looked like it was a two-seater, but when they opened the door,
It was real big inside.
it was vast blackness.
Right. Oh, wow.
And I couldn't even see inside. All I saw was this arm.
Okay. That's
and
a little scary.
I guess a part of me was always kind of like knowing that these kind of cars were following me, but this particular time it stopped. So I screamed no, and this is in the middle of the day, so this is like after school, like around 3 o'clock, walking home. So I ran around the car, booked it home, came in. I was breathless. I walked in, told my mom what happened, and she looked at me like I was nuts. And that was probably the first time. It's not her fault. It's just, and I just want to say that if people who've experienced stuff have parents who just didn't get it, they're just not going to get it.
Sure.
So at that point, I realized at around the 4th or 5th grade that I was kind of on my own dealing with this kind of thing, because she didn't believe me. I think my dad questioned me, and they thought that I had hallucinated or made it up.
So you think she was afraid to believe you?
Totally. I think my parents were very afraid. I think stuff happened to my parents that they never talked about.
Sure. Right.
My parents have passed away a couple of years ago. So and even if I brought this type of topic up, they never talk about it. It was just a taboo kind of conversation.
Right.
So that was that experience. And I don't know why. I think it was partial Men in Black. I think they were connected to that experience.
Right.
And then I always have even to this day, I have a problem wanting to jump in the bushes whenever a car's coming by, or hiding behind Michael. Or, I just don't like when cars come up behind me. I dread it. It's that horrible dread feeling. And then the third experience I had was when I was coming home from Egypt in 1992. And I just had a fiasco of an experience because I forgot to get my passport stamped when I came into Egypt the second time. And then, of course, when I was leaving, they thought I was there illegally, which I probably was. And I had to just
technically, because
yeah.
you didn't get the thing stamped.
I didn't get it stamped, and so I was escorted by 2 soldiers to this office, and it said, they said, "This is the general of the army," kind of thing. So I was sitting next to across from a general, trying to explain to him that I wasn't, a bad person, and I was there an hour, and I gave him all my information and stuff, and he was just having fun and playing around, and they let me go. They held the plane for me, which was really odd. It was TWA, the good old days of TWA, and just before I guess they no longer were in service.
Right.
And anyways, so I had a bunch of really disgruntled people in the plane, when I walked in, and the stewardesses weren't any nicer. I mean, everybody was mad at me, and I have no idea why they held this plane for me, because I didn't understand that, because I thought I missed my plane. I knew I was going to miss my plane, and the general said they were going to hold it for me till he got down to the bottom of whatever this me being there was. So anyway, so I'm all frazzled from that, and we get off. The next city was Paris, and so we fly into Paris, and I think it was Paris. Anyways, it was France, whatever. And I'm getting off the what do they call it? The tarmac, the walkway from the plane into the airport. Tarmac. Thank you. Right. And so I was walking past one area, and two men in black suits with sunglasses came out. I don't know if they came out of, I don't know if it looked like curtains to me, but it doesn't make any sense why it would be curtains. But maybe the wall. I mean, I don't know how they got there, but they came out and they went and grabbed at me, and they said I had to come with them. And they, I don't know if they looked pasty, but they looked abnormal. I don't know how to explain that. And I think it's when they look a lot alike, that's when you kind of go, oh, this is kind of creepy. Yeah. Anyways, I was already a drama queen at that point. So I stepped back and I'm like, ah, and I got all dramatic. People were looking, and I said, yeah, I'm not going anywhere with you. And I go running off and going down the tarmac. And they just actually disappeared. And I thought for sure they were going to run after me, but sure, I don't think they could, because there are people around me.
Right.
So anyways, I get to the into the airport, and I just noticed that I was being watched and followed. And I actually had a crazy experience with a man on the next leg from when I went to I think I went from France into New York. And a man found me in New York. I don't know who he was affiliated with, but he got to talking to me, and he stayed on the plane with me from New York to Dallas. And then he had to take off and go somewhere else. But I think he was some kind of agent, and I really do. I don't think he was in the Men in Black kind of thing, but I think the whole scenario of all my experience it created an interest somehow. Mm-hmm. And so he gave me his card, and like you, I had it for a long time, and then I don't know what I did with it. I mean, I have no clue. So that would have been very interesting. And I actually did call, I think I did call the number, and because he said, hey, when you get home, give me a call. And there's a woman who actually answered, and they seemed really freaked out that I had called. I don't know why. And I just kind of,
maybe nobody should have a number that isn't part of their group, and you apparently qualified as that. So
well, yeah, I'm like, how did you get the number? Yeah.
Even though the guy did give you the card.
Yeah, yeah, he did. So, and anyway, so that was a third experience of the Men in Black, the guys who kind of came at me in the tarmac. And I don't even know how they did it. I mean, if you think about it realistically, there's no curtains by the tarmac. I mean, it's gonna.
Well, the only thing there is curtains, interesting enough. The only thing I can think of is on those luggage carriers. They used to, I don't know if they do it now anymore, but they actually have those curtains where when they put the luggage in, those old ones, they would close those up.
Are they going to pull me onto the luggage?
I guess pull you on and take you back, or take you somewhere.
I have no idea where they were going to take me, but I do know that when I was in Egypt, I had a lot of very unusual and crazy stuff happen. And I actually did have, there was a strange man that actually requested to take my photograph. He said, oh, of course, trying to be charming. Oh, you're so beautiful. Can I take your picture? And it's like, oh, okay.
Sure.
Always get to women's vanity that way. Yeah. But anyways, so I just think that being in Egypt at that time was very unusual. And so I just felt like that. I don't know if I necessarily felt like they were the traditional men in black. I think there's three different groups of men in black. I think that there's the what I call the authentic men in black, which are the kind of creepy guys with the pasty skin and that.
More of the alien type. Don't you think
Yes.
it's more alien type?
I wouldn't call them alien because I I don't know if they're dimensional or if they're hybrids or if they're maybe you're right. Maybe they are aliens, but they're just a different uh, type of alien. But then there's the what I call the military, but I don't think it's look, we all wear black. I like to wear black. I'm not a woman in black, but when I'm wearing black, I am kind of, but I'm not like that titled woman in black. I think that it just happens to be a color that some people see different groups wearing. So who are the groups? We don't know. Then I think there's the government men in black, but I don't think it's that they're whatever. I think the two guys who came at me in the tarmac were maybe more government than they were anything else, but they did look alike, but they didn't have the pasty skin. So anyways, I think that's kind of, I think there's three different groups who actually, that's what they do. Now you do have a story you said about somebody that you and your sister talked to who had some experiences with the UFOs and their family.
Okay. Yeah, I can go ahead and tell you
Because
that
I
one.
think those are the creepy ones. Aren't they?
Yeah. Well,
I don't want to call them creepy. They're just the alien ones.
let me just jump to the one in Albuquerque. Okay.
Oh,
Can I do the one in Albuquerque? Because I was going to save that one for maybe the other one, because it has to do with abductions.
Oh, I already mentioned it, so you're gonna have
That's
to
all right.
say it.
No. We can. It'll be something coming up because I can make that into kind of its own little deal.
Okay.
But anyways, let me tell you about my experience with Men in Black in Albuquerque. So one day I was home and I got a knock on the door and I opened the door to I didn't. I kind of peeped through the hole. There was a little peephole, and I did see two official looking people there. One was a woman and one was a man, and they looked kind of official, but looking through a peephole, you really can't see. And it was daylight, so it wasn't that I was overly concerned that this is something. It looked like maybe, in fact, I think one flashed some kind of a badge or something, so that got my attention. And so I opened the door, and they were there, and they were odd. They were definitely odd. They were dressed in dark kind of black outfit. He had a dark ball cap on. She was dressed very professionally, kind of in a black suit kind of thing. And he was dressed in a suit with a tie, but with a ball cap on. I thought it was kind of odd. But anyways, and it had some kind of insignia on it.
What was the insignia?
No, I don't know. I didn't know what it was, but I kind of used it a little bit against him. I'll tell you in a minute. Not against him, but you'll see what happens.
Okay.
So anyways, he started asking, what was so odd about it, I was not expecting the questions he asked. I think if I remember correctly, a couple of the questions, and once I realized I may be up against something unworthily, etc. Because I had been studying this for years, so I wasn't overwhelmed that I was maybe expecting this, who knows. But anyways, he asked, he said, why did you paint your house this color? And I thought, wow, are you kidding me? Okay. And I said, I don't even know what I said, to be honest with you, because it wasn't even that important. I just kind of looked at him and I said, well, I guess I like this color. And then he asked something about the door. And he asked, why do you keep your door locked? And I said, well, to keep people like you out, I guess. No, I didn't say that, but that's what I thought.
I was gonna say.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah,
I just,
I thought
that, but I said, well, it isn't, these neighborhoods aren't that safe. You want to keep your door locked, etc. And then the woman, she never said nothing the whole time they were there. They weren't there that long. Did not say anything.
Did you feel anything from her?
Yeah, their whole energy was strange. I mean, it kind of vibrated the air around them. And again, their skin was if I didn't say that already, they were
Pasty?
pasty. They're, and they talk very monotone. They just kind of like talk very strange. So I'd been told one time by a guy that was a researcher that knew, had some experience with Men in Black, and he had told me, he said, one of the things you can do is you start asking them crazy questions. So I asked him, why do you wear that ball cap? And he didn't say anything. And then I asked her, why did you have one earring on one ear? And she didn't have any earrings on at all. So I ended up asking about 3 or 4 additional questions, and they just stood there and they didn't answer anything. They stood there. And then suddenly they just turned around and they left. And I was just standing there kind of looking out. And the way the house is situated is, you really, once they leave your sight, just slightly to one side or the other, they're gone, because basically the way the house was in Rainbow, you know what I'm talking about, that front door there, you would just go by the gate. But here's the other thing. I did close the door. I don't remember how many seconds after I was standing there looking out nowhere land, but I never heard the gate close. You remember the gate? And it was one of those gates that pretty
You
noisy.
could hear it creaky.
Yeah, it made a lot of noise, and then when it hit, it did. But now that I look back, when I stepped back in the house and closed the door and locked it, I never heard the gate at any point, which I thought was really odd. And that even gave me more strange feelings, because I don't know if they just kind of disappeared. They seemed to really be out of sight extremely quickly, and I didn't really hear anything, etc. So that was my little story. And this whole thing took less than 5 minutes. It really was a very short thing. They never asked, what was interesting, they never asked to come in the house. I wasn't going to let them in, even though they flashed a badge, which I guess I was thinking quicker. I would have looked at the badge once the door was open and see who they were from, or in theory, but I didn't. Because there's a lot of things that are going through your mind, and it's really swirling and whirling. Even though in my mind, I was kind of semi-prepared for this type of encounter, I guess I really wasn't. But I was at least prepared. What this guy told me to do is ask him questions back. Is stranger. Because what he said is, some of these Men in Black are alien types, and basically they're programmed to go ahead, and eventually they would ask about your UFO encounters, or your studies, or whatever you were doing in the field of UFOs. They would ask some important questions, and eventually they would have told you to shut up or don't say them anymore, and then they would have left. Well, I got to the point where I asked them those few questions that completely blew their mind, because they were programmed in such a way they weren't prepared for that. So that just changes their whole thing, and it just split. And I never heard from him. I never saw him again. Of course, I thought about him for years. And then after a while, I wasn't expecting them to ever show up again. And they never did.
So why do you think that in your case that they didn't? Because I know in some of the stories I've read about the Men in Black, that they will take over someone's thought process and actually have them invite them in, even though they don't want them to come in. So why do you think they didn't do that with you, but they do that with some people?
I think probably because maybe I was a little more prepared, I think, for them, meaning that I had always said in my mind, because I had been, researching, and I was kind of out there with the different groups, the UFO groups, etc. And it was kind of known that I had, been doing some serious research, that I think I felt they were going to show up, or that was a possibility. So I think I was ready somewhat. And because of that, they weren't able to get that deeply into me and control me, I guess is the best way to put it. And then when I zinged them with some weird questions that completely confused them, that was that was the end. They didn't get that far in at all. So I think I think at all these things, as long as you're prepared somewhat to the possibility, and you don't completely freak yourself out, and you just kind of hold your ground and not be fearful, I think basically they have no ability to control you. And I think that's one takeaway of it all, right?
Well, for me, I guess because when I was young, I experienced what we call the alien or the hybrid type of Men in Black. I learned children can adjust to any type of person.
Right.
It seems, just like we had talked about earlier, as a child, I was able to adjust to the grays or whatever.
Right.
So I never looked at them really as like spooky, scary. There actually were humans I've met that are a lot scarier to me than the men in black. But to me, I related to them more growing up. And I don't know, I remember that there was something that they were doing with me, some training aspect of what they were teaching me, but I can't remember what they taught me.
Right.
It's blocked.
Right.
But I don't have the fear a lot of people have of the men in black. And I've never had a woman in black encounter.
Right.
I actually wouldn't mind that, because I'm intrigued with the idea of who they are and who they work for, what group they're from, and actually what they're all about, because
Right.
they are a very secretive group. Nobody really knows.
No, they don't. Nobody seems to know.
Of all the groups that we've ever heard of, including any alien groups, this group is secretive beyond anything.
Right. No, they definitely are.
Yeah.
There seems to, we don't know, and it almost seems like they want to leave it that way. They want it very secretive. They want you guessing, is it really a government thing, or who is behind,
or is
all
it their
this?
own agenda?
Is their own agenda?
They contracted with certain groups. Who knows? I mean, I find it very intriguing and interesting, because they are a very, very important part of the alien phenomenon from way back.
Right. Right. Yeah.
They've been a part of it ever since.
Right.
Because ever since the first stories came out many, many years ago, even before the 40s, I think there were even stories from the 1880s. There's always been somebody strange around asking questions. So they've been around since the story started happening.
Asking questions, maybe suppressing the truth.
Yeah.
And just trying to keep people from spreading stuff. Maybe it's just it's truths, but they don't want people arousing other people into asking more questions and etc. So
yeah.
So anyways, so what about
the black-eyed kids?
Okay.
And the black-eyed kids, to me, are a very unusual phenomenon, and it's almost like the Slender Man phenomenon, because it seems like in mainstream society we have this ability to kind of create these monsters that actually come alive just from the focus that a multitude of people have, especially with their mindset. So if you think about how powerful we are, I believe the Slender Man phenomenon kind of entered the mainstream society, and thus another Frankenstein type monster was created.
Right.
And I'm not.
Yeah, maybe I know. I was just going to say, maybe created for almost like a quantum, where you have a group of people that are sending out these thoughts, similar thoughts, and it actually creates a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's real. It's a real thing. It actually creates this thing.
In their mind, it's real. So that's the whole thing about reality. And so what I found interesting about the stories with the black-eyed children, and David Weatherly wrote a great book on the black-eyed children. I highly recommend everybody.
Yes, and I read her book. I was going to take credit for it, but no, I did read the book.
That's my book.
It's her book, so I didn't talk about it. I just left it to her.
Or whatever. But
yeah, right.
So the one thing about the black-eyed kids is that there's been talk about people thinking that they're connected to the Men in Black. Now, I don't know if the black-eyed children are really if they're a hybrid of some type, and I think they are, but they seem to be really, really menacing. There's some kind of negative energy, or almost like a cursed type of energy connected to them whenever they go visit somebody. And I've always wondered why they pick certain people to go visit, because if they ever came around this house, I'd beat their butts. I wouldn't allow them around, because they affect animals in a negative way, and you don't mess with my babies. So, and that includes Michael. You don't mess with Michael either. So the black-eyed kids, to me, are a phenomena, because if they're a hybrid type of prototype. What are they? Because they have like a vampire-ish type of MO where they
Right.
have to be invited in. You got to
Right.
invite them
Right.
either into your car or your house,
Right.
and they will harass you until you let them. And they can, and when people look in their eyes, they actually get in a trance-like mind fog, and they let them in. And but then there's people who've been very nice who've just let them in thinking, oh, these are kids because they're lost, it's late at night. They always come late at night because that is the one time when a human will go, especially if you're a parent, you shouldn't be out there. Why are you out there? And the kids are always dressed weird.
Yeah, they're never coordinated.
Yeah.
It's just
Or they're dressed in the 1950s.
right. It's way out of
So
the
they're
era
and
dress. Really
yes.
weird. Yeah.
And so and they can even be dressed even in the dead of winter in light clothes and not be affected by it.
Right.
Now there was one case where somebody actually had the black-eyed kids come to their house, and they got freaked out. They had that fight or flight feeling, that feeling of dread, and they slammed the door. They immediately afterwards regained their composure, went out, and went to go see where the kids were. And they saw the kids down the road in the speed they said couldn't happen. They don't even know how they got that far, but they went into a black vehicle with some adults who were dressed in black.
Yeah.
So does that connect these black-eyed kids to the men in black?
But yeah, and what about if they're just in training, they're men in black in training or something?
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
these kids are men. The men in black don't go curse people. They
no,
don't.
they don't. They're quite right.
They will.
Yes.
They will basically tell someone, "You better not do this, or we're gonna do something
They
to
may
you."
do threatening, but they
Yeah.
typically just do the threatening move.
Yeah,
They go
these
back.
kids
They leave.
actually have made people sick and
Right.
have caused
And
animals to
To
die.
die. Yes, I was going to say that
And
they've
they've
caused
caused grown men who are, big, strong guys to just back away in fear for
Right.
their lives.
Right.
And these kids can do stuff that are very unusual. I mean, there was a story we heard about in Portland here in Oregon, where a lady was smoking a cigarette out on her balcony and saw some black-eyed kids. And that when she came back into her apartment, they were outside her door. And then the speed in which they can move is supernatural. So we know it's some type of paranormal phenomenon happening with
Right.
these
Mhm.
these black-eyed kids.
Mhm.
And then they can be from the ages of 8 years old up into 16 years old.
Sure.
And they wear different types of clothing. A lot of them wear hoodies. And if they don't do what they want, they get really angry at you.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, I just wanted to discuss this because how are they connected to the men in black or the women in black?
Yeah. No, I don't think we really know that. There is some really major similarities, but there is some differences too. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
that. Can I tell my little story?
Do yeah.
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 So this is a more local story. So this is not directly involved with us, but it's in our neighborhood, basically, or down
Yeah.
the street. I think it was about a year ago or so. I got a message on. We have like I think everybody has this kind of a network that you kind of like an internet thing where you go
It's
in
a
there and
neighborhood network.
Yeah, it's just basically in your neighborhood area, and it could be quite a large neighborhood. But you can go in there and put things down, alerts or sell something or all this different stuff. It's something neighborhood something, and I forget the name. But anyway, so all of a sudden this one comes up and said, "Hey, have you guys seen this group of kids?" And this was more than just two. This was like about four, and there was a couple older ones and smaller ones, etc. And they would come to the door, and they had an interesting little pitch. They had some type of a chemical that would clean your rugs. And what it was is just amazing. All it was all of them were holding a bottle of Dawn soap dish detergent. And they kind of made this was some kind of amazing stuff. And it was really important that they came into your house and they showed you how well this magic juice would clean your rugs, right? And so they would come and they were very nice at first. And then most people, I think most people would see them. And by the way, a lot of them would come later in the evening when it was dark outside,
Yeah.
and which was really unusual. So they would kind of like pile up in front of your door. You'd open the door and they give you a little spiel, and they were very nice at first. And then when you were pushing back and not going to let them in, then they become more aggressive. And they said, well, you have to let us in. And then they start making all these other kind of stories and throw in there, well, we're cold, or we're hungry, or we're this, we're that, we have to come in. And some of them were really small, and they would be telling that sad little story where the older ones were kind of being more aggressive, right? So most of the people that, were involved, I mean, there was comments on the after the story, and some people say, yeah, we saw them too, or they came and we weren't going to open the door, etc., etc. Now, here's the interesting thing. I guarantee you, if they were out in the neighborhood, there were some older people, some elderly people that I'm sure let them in. Now, we don't have a clue what possibly happened when they were led into the house.
They did. They were?
No, we don't know. I'm just saying, I'm speculating that if there were several people that saw them, I'm sure there were elderly people that, maybe didn't comment or whatever, that were let in, because I could see very easily.
I don't know if late at night, if
if they were doing if the young ones were doing a little pitch that they're hungry, they want to call. It was just odd because they started off trying to sell something to you, a product.
Yeah.
Right. Which, okay, first of all, maybe in the middle of the day you would have bought into it a little bit more, but of course when they showed you it was Dawn soap, not so much anymore. But it was a lot of stuff that seemed a little weird all the way through this, but it gets weirder as you go because of the fact is they become more aggressive. And that's where a lot of people would just kind of like freak out and just slam the door in their face, and they would go kind of run off. And some of the people, I think some of the comments were, the people came and they kind of they were there knocking on the door and kind of violently knocking on the door. And then people would look and they were gone. They would like kind of disappear, but they didn't say that. Now, nobody ever went to this point that they were talking about black-eyed children. They weren't aware. I mean, people in the neighborhood, most neighbors are not aware of black-eyed children. This would probably freak them out. So I try to go through and you can contact directly the person that started the initial posting, right? You can go directly through without going into the general thing. So I said, I kind of told her I'm a kind of a researcher, and I'm just curious. Can you give me some more detail about your experience? And of course, I never did hear from that person because they probably said, "Oh, geez, who's this guy?" So unfortunately, I was going to go slowly and not get them upset. But but the takeaway is people have to be careful. When there's a knock on the door, I've written about this several times. When there's a knock on the door, you need to just be careful. And just before you open your door up, we're lucky because our door, we got a kind of a solid, it's a screen door, but it's a heavy screen door.
I got woo-woo around our door.
So. Yeah, and Rainbow's got things that keep things
As a
out.
medicine woman, I took care of all the entrances and the windows of our house.
Right. So there's nobody strange going to come in there. They wouldn't make it through.
No, I mean.
But again.
No, I wouldn't let them. I have that mindset of just, you stay away from my home.
Right.
Because and the one thing I wanted to ask you is, did anybody call the police? Were the police called? Because I was wondering, what would the police do if they ever met these kids?
Yeah, you know what? Here, the interesting thing, I think one of the things a lot of people did do is they've had that feeling when the story was on this network thing.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of them that comment and said, "Did you call the police? Did you call the police?" And I think she said she did. It was after the fact, though, like the next day.
Okay.
So she just said, there's these people around and they were kind of aggressive and it just didn't seem right. It was the middle of the night. She told the police that, but I never heard anything follow up on that at all, which would have been interesting.
Yeah, that would have been interesting because I don't think I've ever heard a story about the police actually encountering
directly
the black-eyed kids.
No,
they always disappear before they can ever be approached.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There seems to be that scenario that happens that nobody can encounter them directly if you're authority with a weapon or something like
Yeah.
that. So anyways, so what else we got? What else do we have? Anything else?
I think that was it. If anybody has any black-eyed men or women stories, feel free to comment in or to
black-eyed
write
children.
us, or
Black-eyed
black-eyed
children,
children
right.
too. And you can write us at dimensionalwalking@gmail.com.
Right, right. And also you can write us there and ask us to talk about any type of subject matter related to the paranormal. Rainbow, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing it for over 50 years. I'm very old. And Rainbow's much younger, but she's still been doing it for a very long time.
I got a birthday coming up.
She's got a birthday coming up, so she's not that, but she's not that old. Promise me. Promise you. Promise me, promise you. I'll promise somebody. So anyways, yeah. And if you really like us, give us a like. And if you really like to continue watching us, you can subscribe to us. Of course, we need the subscriptions like everybody does.
And comments. I would love
comments
it
too.
if, don't be shy. Don't be, just comment in, or if you're more private, then write us.
Write us an
Because
email.
Everything that we talk to you all about on video is very near and dear to our hearts. And, we're very respectful people. So we're not going to go and, we're going to be respectful of everybody's privacy.
Right.
Nothing's going to get out or
Right.
anything. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing that I think I wanted to say is that if anybody's concerned about that, we're very respectful. We care about your privacy because we care about our privacy. We're very private people and we get it.
Right. So anyways, with that said, thank you very much. And we'll see you next week. Oh, wait.
One more thing. I just want to let you all know.
I
gotta get my glasses.
Hold it.
I did do an article in Paranormal Underground. And this is the October 2019 issue. Can you see it without it being blurry?
That's good.
There you go. So please,
and that's Rainbow last year. That's Rainbow there.
So if you want to, please subscribe to Paranormal Underground. It's paranormalunderground.net. So a lot of good, cool stories, a lot of good authors, and interesting topics.
Okay.
That's it.
With that said, goodbye, and we'll see you.
Thank you, everybody.